Friends, if you're someone who enjoys thrilling crime dramas based on real-life gangsters, then you should definitely check out Gotti, 2018 in English. This movie brings the infamous story of mafia boss John Gotti to the screen with intensity, emotion, and a whole lot of drama. And if you're visiting our channel for the first time, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on our exciting movie updates, reviews, and recommendations. We've got a lot to talk about today, so buckle up for an in-depth look at this controversial yet fascinating film. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into everything you need to know about Gotti. We'll explore what the movie is really about, the major themes it tackles, and the story it tries to tell. I'll also let you know where you can currently stream or watch the film, whether it's available on an OTT platform or airing on a satellite channel. Whether you're planning a weekend movie night or just curious about where to find it, I've got you covered. We'll also take a close look at the technical side of the movie, how it was shot, who directed it, and the kind of visual style and cinematography that was used. We'll talk about the music department and how the soundtrack adds to the film's atmosphere. I'll cover how the movie was planned during the pre-production stage, where and how it was filmed, and how it all came together in post-production. You'll also find out the full budget of the film and how it performed at the box office. Was it a hit, a flop, or something in between? Of course, we'll go into the actual story of Gotti, who John Gotti was, how the film portrays his rise to power in the Gambino crime family, and the ups and downs of his journey. I'll also give you a short review of the story, sharing my opinion on what parts of the film worked well and what could have been better. We'll also look at how the film tries to balance fact with dramatization and whether it succeeds in telling an engaging and accurate story. In addition to all that, we'll break down the star cast, who played whom, how the actors performed, and what kind of impact their roles had on the film. From John Travolta's transformation into the Teflon Don, to the supporting cast who helped bring this gritty tale to life, we'll go into all the details. I'll also share some fun and lesser-known facts about the film, its production challenges, and how the real Gotti family reacted to it. So friends, I encourage you to watch this video till the end, because whether you're a fan of gangster movies, true crime stories, or just curious about the legacy of one of America's most notorious mob bosses, you're going to find this video packed with valuable insights. So, let's not waste any more time and get right into today's video. Alright friends, let's buckle up and dive headfirst into the whirlwind that is the plot of Gotti, 2018. And let me tell you, this isn't your standard A to B kind of story. This film is like opening a time capsule and having all the decades explode out at once. It's bold, chaotic, fast-moving, and unapologetically nonlinear. You're not just watching a story unfold, you're being thrown into the mind and memories of the infamous John Gotti, and you better keep up, because the movie doesn't slow down for anyone. The opening scene sets the tone perfectly. There's John Travolta, fully immersed in his Gotti persona, gray-haired, sharp suit, standing by the water in New York, and he looks right into the camera. "Let me tell you something about life," he says. It's not a scene, it's a declaration. Right away, you know this isn't going to be a straight crime biopic. Instead of starting with Gotti as a young man hustling in the streets, we're dropped into fragments of his life, bouncing back and forth between major events like we're flipping through a mob boss's highlight reel. One minute we're in 1973, the next in 1992, then back to the 1980s. And what ties it all together? Gotti's voice, his perspective, his unfiltered commentary on life, loyalty, crime, and legacy. So, how does the story unfold? Think of it like a mosaic. Instead of one clean arc, you get overlapping layers of Gotti's personal and criminal life told through flashbacks, courtroom flash-forwards, news clips, and gritty street-level drama. There's no narrator guiding you. The movie assumes you either know who Gotti is or you're willing to piece it all together like a detective at a crime board with red string everywhere. One of the earliest major events is Gotti's entry into the Gambino crime family and his relationship with his mentor, Aniello Delacroce. This is where the seeds of power, loyalty, and ambition are planted. Delacroce teaches him the rules of the mob life, the code of silence, the structure of the family. It's almost father-son-like. But this connection becomes even more important later when Delacroce's death creates a vacuum that sparks one of the film's most explosive turning points, the assassination of Paul Castellano. This moment isn't just a mob hit. It's Gotti's coronation. It's the power grab that makes him boss. The way the film builds up to it, with simmering tension, conspiratorial meetings, and fast-paced editing, feels like something out of a thriller, but it's all based on real events. From there, the story explodes into Gotti's reign as the Dapper Don. This is where the film flexes its style. You see Gotti in his element, flashing smiles for reporters, strutting out of courtrooms, commanding rooms with his presence. He's portrayed as both ruthless and charismatic, and the movie leans heavily into that duality. One moment he's ordering a hit, and the next he's dancing at his son's birthday party or kissing his wife on the cheek. The contrast is jarring, and that's exactly what the movie wants. It wants you to feel the contradiction of a man who lived in blood but wrapped himself in family values. The father-son relationship is another thread that runs through the film, tying the chaotic timeline together. Gotti's bond with John Gotti Jr. becomes more central as the movie progresses, especially in the 1990s timeline when Gotti is behind bars and Jr. is being pressured to continue the legacy. These scenes are emotional, sometimes melodramatic, but they give the story a human touch. It's not just about bullets and bodies, it's about identity, inheritance, and the crushing weight of a name. Jr. wants out. Gotti wants the name to live on. That clash becomes one of the film's emotional anchors. Meanwhile, the film intercuts all this drama with scenes of courtroom trials, FBI investigations, betrayal within the mob ranks, and the slow but steady crumbling of the empire Gotti built. There are wiretaps, snitches, and the slow suffocation of loyalty as the law closes in. It's not just a story of rise and fall, it's about how power corrodes, how fame can become a prison, and how even a man who beat the system over and over again can outrun time. Stylistically, the film jumps through time with no warning. It'll show you Gotti's death, and then slam you back into a nightclub in the 1980s. It doesn't want to explain everything, it wants you to feel it. Feel the energy, the danger, the swagger, the fall. You're not just watching a narrative, you're being pulled into Gotti's world, his memories, his triumphs, his regrets, and his myth. The emotional impact comes not from building tension over time, but from constantly showing you what was gained and what was lost, side by side. So no, Gotti isn't a conventional movie. It's a mob story told like a fever dream. It's part documentary style, part family melodrama, part crime thriller. It experiments with time, with tone, and with truth. And while that might confuse some viewers, it also creates a unique experience, one where you're constantly asking, who was the real Gotti? The ruthless gangster? The loyal father? The media darling? Or a legend built on contradictions? The movie doesn't give you easy answers, but it definitely makes sure you're entertained while you look for them. Alright, let's really get into it, because when it comes to character development in Gotti, 2018, there's a whole tangled web of loyalty, legacy, ego, ambition, love, and loss going on. The movie doesn't just show mobsters running around with guns and gold chains. It tries to dig into who these people are beneath the surface, how they think, what drives them, and how they live with the consequences of the lives they've chosen. And while the film's fast pacing and jumpy timeline might leave you spinning at times, the characters themselves are packed with complexity and contradiction. Let's start where we have to, with John Gotti himself. This isn't a simple rise and fall story of a gangster. This is the life of a man who wanted to be both feared and loved. Gotti, played by John Travolta, is more than just a mob boss in a flashy suit. He's a man who believes in image. He builds a reputation on confidence and style. He's a guy who waves to crowds outside the courthouse and smiles for the cameras like he's running for office, not standing trial for racketeering. But underneath all that bravado, there's a carefully crafted persona. Gotti is constantly balancing two lives, one as a devoted family man, the other as a brutal enforcer and leader of one of the most powerful crime families in America. And what's fascinating is that he doesn't seem to see a contradiction in those roles. He genuinely loves his family, his wife, his children, his friends, but he also believes violence is a necessary tool for survival. His transformation across the film isn't about becoming a criminal. He's already deep in it when the film begins. His arc is more about how power consumes him, how fame changes the way he sees himself. He begins to believe his own myth. He sees himself as untouchable, almost immortal. And that belief drives so many of his decisions, his refusal to take a plea deal, his pride in facing endless indictments, his obsession with legacy over safety. Now, John Gotti Jr., he's a completely different character, and that contrast is where a lot of the film's emotional weight comes from. Junior's journey is the closest thing the film has to a traditional character arc. At first, we see him under his father's wing, soaking up admiration, wanting to be part of the life, eager to prove himself. He wants to be worthy of the name. But as the story progresses, and as the cost of that lifestyle becomes more obvious, arrests, surveillance, betrayal, death, Junior starts to question everything. He begins to realize that living up to the Gotti legacy might mean losing his freedom, his family, or his soul. Their relationship is built on love, but also pressure. Gotti Sr. never says it outright, but he expects his son to carry the torch. He sees it as a matter of honor. But Junior starts to crave something else, peace, maybe, or at least a normal life. He starts weighing the consequences. You can feel the tension in every conversation between them. Gotti looks at Junior and sees the future. Junior looks at his father and sees a man living in a cage of his own making. The heartbreak is that neither of them is entirely wrong, they're just trapped by different beliefs. That generational clash gives the film its heart and its most meaningful transformation, not Gotti's, but his son's. Then there's Victoria Gotti, John's wife, who may not be at the center of the plot, but is absolutely vital to the emotional story. She's fierce, protective, and constantly trying to hold her family together as the world around them falls apart. She doesn't play the passive mob wife you see in a lot of these stories. She pushes back. She challenges John when he's gone too far. She tries to protect her children from the violence that creeps ever closer to their doorstep. In one breath, she's defending her husband to outsiders, and in the next, she's warning him that he's risking everything. Her character adds real emotional stakes to the chaos and gives us a glimpse of what's being lost behind the scenes, the normal life they could have had. Aniello Delacroce, Gotti's mentor, is another crucial piece of the puzzle. He's not flashy or loud, but he represents the old-school code that Gotti originally respects. Delacroce believes in loyalty, in structure, in keeping the peace within the family. He's like a calm in the storm, and when he dies, that calm vanishes. That death is a turning point, not just in the plot, but in Gotti's personal evolution. Without Delacroce's guidance, Gotti lets ambition take over. He stops listening to advice, starts making bold, reckless moves, and the violence escalates. Delacroce doesn't get a ton of screen time, but his presence casts a long shadow. He's the conscience that disappears too soon. The rest of the mob crew, Sammy Gravano, Paul Castellano, Frank DeCicco, they're all important too, but mostly as reflections of Gotti's rise and fall. Gravano's betrayal hits hard because it's not just a legal blow, it's a personal one. Gotti trusted him, confided in him, gave him power. When Gravano flips and testifies, it's the ultimate stab in the back. And yet, in the world of organized crime, that kind of betrayal is practically expected. What makes it hit harder here is how much it shatters the image Gotti worked so hard to build. Throughout all of this, Gotti never really softens or regrets his choices. That's part of what makes his character so compelling. He's consistent in his convictions, even if they're destructive. He believes in loyalty above all else, even when others betray him. He believes in reputation, even when it costs him everything. And most of all, he believes in being remembered. He wants the Gotti name to echo long after he's gone, and that belief drives every move he makes, even from behind bars. That desire to be a legend becomes his greatest strength and his greatest flaw. So, in the end, the characters in Gotti aren't just pieces in a mob game. They're a family caught between power and survival, between myth and reality. They're layered, messy, and often at odds with themselves. Their relationships are filled with love, tension, disappointment, and pride. And those emotional threads are what elevate the story beyond just guns and gangsters. It's a story about legacy, how it's built, how it's protected, and how it can destroy the people who carry it. Alright, let's blow the doors wide open, because the performances in Gotti, 2018, aren't just about playing roles, they're about making an impression. They don't whisper their way into your memory. They charge in, waving their arms, slicked back, cologne-drenched, and loud as a courtroom brawl. This is a film where performances aren't meant to fade into the background, they're the engine of the whole operation. And at the center of that roaring engine, John Travolta, doing what can only be described as an all-in, go-for-broke, chest-thumping embodiment of John Gotti that grabs you by the collar and dares you to look away. Travolta doesn't tiptoe around this role. He doesn't play Gotti with a wink or a whisper of irony. No, he dives in, head first, rings flashing, voice gruff, shoulders wide, and stays there. He's got that Queen's accent dialed up like it's the final round of a boxing match. He talks like every word's being carved into marble. He walks like every hallway is a red carpet. Whether he's giving orders, hugging his son, yelling at the feds, or staring down death in a prison infirmary, Travolta goes full chameleon, except he's a chameleon who wants you to notice the change. He morphs into Gotti with a sense of theatrical pride. And he's not just delivering lines, he's performing them, chewing into them like they're steak and gristle. But it's not just about volume. Travolta finds these moments, especially when Gotti's aging, sick, locked away, where he lets you see the wear and tear. The puffed-up persona starts to crack, just slightly, and you glimpse the man beneath. A man who wanted to live forever in the newspapers, who believed that dying in prison was still preferable to dying forgotten. You get these flashes of vulnerability behind the cocky bravado, and that's where Travolta really delivers. The loud scenes are fun, but the quiet ones, those moments behind glass with his son, those are where the performance becomes surprisingly human. Speaking of the son, Spencer Rocco Lofranco as John Gotti Jr. gives a performance that's like the calm after a hurricane. He's the opposite of his father in so many ways. Where Gotti Sr. is a lion pacing in a cage, Jr. is a young man constantly measuring the walls, checking the locks, trying to figure out if he even wants to be in the same zoo. Lofranco plays him with a steady, internalized conflict that makes his arc feel more relatable. He doesn't shout. He doesn't grandstand. He listens. And in this movie, surrounded by big, brash personalities, that restraint actually makes him stand out. There's tension in every glance he throws at his dad, especially in those courtroom visits, where you can tell he's torn between duty and disillusionment. He's a boy raised in a world where power is everything, and he's starting to question the cost. Then there's Kelly Preston, playing Victoria Gotti. This is a performance that hits all the emotional notes: grit, loyalty, heartbreak, fury. She's not just there to smile and nod from the sidelines. She fights for her family. You can feel the weight she's carrying in every scene. She's the emotional center of the Gotti home, the one who sees both the chaos and the cracks. When she's arguing with her husband, it's not just a domestic squabble. It's the collision of love and frustration, of wanting to hold everything together while the walls keep shaking. Preston brings a raw, lived-in energy to the role. You believe that this woman has stood by her husband through trials, lies, betrayals, and grief. And that's not easy to sell, especially in a story where the men dominate the headlines. But she carves out her space and leaves a lasting impact. Let's not forget Stacy Keach, playing the mob elder statesman Aniello Delacroce. This guy walks into a scene and immediately radiates wisdom and authority. He's the quiet eye of a storm, the moral compass in a world that's quickly losing its sense of direction. Keach gives Delacroce a stoic, almost philosophical edge. He doesn't waste words. He doesn't explode. He's all about control, balance, the old ways. And when he speaks, people listen. It's the kind of performance that adds depth to a film full of noise. And when he's gone, you feel it. The equilibrium is lost, and everything starts spinning. William DeMeo as Sammy the Bull Gravano deserves a shout too. He plays Gravano with a snake-like slickness. You can almost see the gears turning in his head. He starts off as Gotti's right-hand man, all loyalty and confidence. But as the walls close in, you can tell he's calculating his next move. DeMeo gives him a coiled energy, like he's waiting to strike. And when the betrayal finally happens, it's not just a plot point, it's an emotional punch. You feel the sting, not because Gravano was a hero, but because he was trusted. DeMeo captures that shift beautifully. The supporting cast? Oh, they're having the time of their lives. Everyone seems to understand the tone. This is a gangster movie that leans into its genre with gusto. Guys like Chris Curson, Pruitt Taylor-Vince, and Leo Rossi roll through scenes with swagger and menace. They laugh too loud, argue too much, throw threats like they're party favors, but that's what makes it fun. Each one adds to the atmosphere, like ingredients in a spicy Italian stew. Nobody's trying to win an Oscar in the background. They're trying to make you remember them, even if they're only in 2 or 3 scenes. All of these performances, whether big or small, loud or understated, come together to create a world that feels just this side of theatrical. And maybe that's the point. This isn't a documentary. It's a crime opera. It's about image and legend and the messy line between fact and fantasy. These actors bring that to life, not with quiet realism, but with bold, deliberate choices. They don't just want to play gangsters. They want to own every scene they walk into. And love it or not, that energy is infectious. Alright, let's peel back every layer and really dive deep into the direction of Gotti, because what Kevin Connolly does with this film is nothing short of ambitious, chaotic, passionate, and at times, downright operatic. He didn't just step into the director's chair and say, "Let's tell a gangster story." No. He said, "Let's build a monument. Let's light it up with neon, crank the soundtrack, and make it feel like a Broadway mobster musical with a heavy side of documentary flavor." You can tell Connolly wasn't aiming for subtlety. He wanted to make something big, something loud, something that stamped the myth of John Gotti in cinematic concrete. And he absolutely leaned into the legend. The tone of the film, it's like riding a subway that's swerving between crime saga, family drama, biopic, and even a little courtroom thriller, all while the conductor is shouting facts over the intercom. Connolly doesn't settle into one vibe. He blends genres like he's mixing drinks at a mobster's after-hours bar. One minute it's gritty and violent, the next it's sentimental and heartfelt. Then suddenly, you're dropped into a flashy montage with a rock song blaring in the background while bodies hit the pavement. It's tonal whiplash, and that's kind of the point. Connolly's saying, this man was a contradiction. So my movie will be too. It's a stylistic choice that makes the film feel like it's alive, pulsing with the same chaotic energy Gotti brought to the streets and courtrooms of New York. Let's talk about that documentary-style framing. Connolly has Travolta's Gotti break the fourth wall more than once, looking straight into the camera and addressing the audience as if he's narrating his own myth. This isn't your traditional character voiceover. This is Gotti the legend standing on a bridge in the middle of the night, telling you, the viewer, how it all went down. It's theatrical, it's defiant, and it sets the tone right away. You're not watching history through a neutral lens. You're hearing it from the man who lived it, or at least from someone who wants you to believe that. This choice immediately establishes a bias, and Connolly runs with it. He's not afraid to blur the line between fact and fiction, because the legend of Gotti has always lived somewhere in the fog between the two. The pacing of the film is absolutely relentless. Connolly packs nearly 3 decades of Gotti's life into less than 2 hours, and he doesn't waste time holding your hand through it. Scenes leap forward in time with little warning. One moment you're watching a hit go down in the 70s, the next you're in a 1990s courtroom with Gotti Jr. taking the heat. Connolly's approach to storytelling is like flipping through a photo album at high speed. It's not clean or polished, but it's got energy. You feel the weight of time passing, the rise and fall of power, the mounting consequences, even if you don't get a deep breath between moments. That rushed, crowded feeling. It mirrors Gotti's own life, constantly moving, always under pressure, forever performing. Cinematography is another arena where Connolly's directorial style stands out. The camera treats Gotti like royalty. Whether it's a low-angle hero shot, a moody silhouette behind prison glass, or a slow-motion strut into a party, every frame seems designed to reinforce his status. Connolly wants you to see Gotti as larger than life, even when he's sick, even when he's behind bars, even when his world is falling apart. The visual language of the film never lets him feel small. That's a deliberate choice, and one that speaks to Connolly's intent. This isn't about dismantling a myth, it's about committing to it. There's also something to be said about the way Connolly stages intimate scenes versus public ones. The private moments, like Gotti arguing with his wife, or advising his son, are tight, close-up, emotional. The camera gets in their faces, letting you see the sweat, the tears, the weariness. But the public scenes, that's where Connolly zooms out. He shows you the crowds, the media frenzy, the limos and handshakes and paparazzi flashes. He's drawing a contrast between Gotti the man and Gotti the myth. And he uses the direction to keep that tension humming, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in dissonance. Musical choices deserve their own spotlight. Connolly drops tracks into scenes like he's scoring a highlight reel. Classic rock, operatic strings, nostalgic ballads, they all weave through the film like a jukebox full of emotion. It's not subtle, but it doesn't want to be. When someone gets clipped or cuffed, the music swells like you're watching the final act of a Shakespearean tragedy set in Brooklyn. Connolly knows the soundtrack is doing emotional heavy lifting, and he lets it carry some of the more chaotic transitions from scene to scene. What's fascinating is how Connolly handles legacy. He's not directing this like a cautionary tale. He's not exactly glorifying Gotti, but he's not tearing him down either. He's more interested in the spectacle of Gotti, the way he controlled his image, the way people saw him as both protector and predator. Connolly's direction seems to say, whether you loved him or hated him, you couldn't ignore him. And that idea becomes the film's backbone. Every stylistic flourish, the time jumps, the camera angles, the music, the break the fourth wall narration, it all works toward keeping Gotti front and center, in control of his story even in death. And we can't ignore the gamble Connolly took in directing a film that's this personality-driven. He had to know it would divide audiences. It doesn't follow a safe structure, and it doesn't care about being neatly digestible. But that boldness, that desire to do something different, is baked into every decision. It's a film directed with a sense of urgency, like Connolly was racing against time to capture the last flickering embers of a legacy before they faded into history. So no, it's not polished perfection. It's not subtle, or restrained, or even completely coherent all the time. But the direction of Gotti is absolutely intentional. Kevin Connolly treats the film like a tribute, a mixtape, a mural sprayed across a city wall. It's messy, loud, proud, and maybe even a little chaotic, but it's alive. It's emotional, and it's got the fingerprints of a director who wanted to make something unforgettable. Whether it works or not for every viewer, you can't deny, Connolly came in swinging. Alright, let's take a deeper dive into the cinematography of Gotti, because this film's camera work is not just a passive observer, it's an active storyteller, shaping how we experience every twist, every emotion, every pulse of John Gotti's chaotic life. The cinematography becomes a visual language of power, tension, vulnerability, and myth-making that keeps pulling you in, whether you realize it or not. Starting with the camera angles, the film absolutely loves to play with perspective to tell you who's boss, and that's John Gotti. Low-angle shots are a recurring motif whenever we see Travolta as Gotti, positioning him like a towering colossus in the frame. These shots make you look up to him, literally and figuratively. Whether he's strolling into a courtroom, stepping out of a limousine, or surveying a room, the camera places you in a position of awe and intimidation. This visual tactic instantly communicates Gotti's dominance and presence. The effect is subtle but powerful. It constantly reminds you that this man commands attention, respect, and fear. And it doesn't stop there. These shots are often combined with tight framing, so Gotti almost fills the screen, making it hard to look away. You get the sense that this is the man who controls not just the room, but the story itself. On the flip side, when the camera moves closer, we get intimate, intense close-ups that reveal the man behind the legend. These tight shots capture every nuance of Travolta's performance, every flicker of doubt, every grimace, every hint of fatigue or steely resolve. In moments of vulnerability, whether he's quietly contemplating a family issue or grappling with his own mortality behind bars, the cinematography zooms in like a microscope, forcing us to confront the human beneath the myth. You feel the tension pressing in, the emotional weight that Gotti carries but rarely shows openly. This interplay between wide, dominating shots and tight, vulnerable ones creates a compelling visual tension that mirrors Gotti's own dual nature, a public titan and a private man. Lighting is another masterstroke in the film's visual storytelling. The lighting scheme shifts dramatically to suit the mood and setting. Family scenes often glow with warm, golden hues, soft, inviting light that bathes moments with Gotti's wife and children in a nostalgic, almost tender atmosphere. This warmth provides a stark contrast to the rest of the film's more somber or violent tones, highlighting the personal stakes behind the gangster's public life. You get the sense that behind the crime and chaos, there is a man craving normalcy and love, even if he can't fully have it. In contrast, scenes involving the criminal underworld, police investigations, or prison life are drenched in cold, unforgiving lighting. Fluorescent glare, harsh shadows, and deep chiaroscuro create an atmosphere thick with menace and suspicion. Faces are often half hidden in shadow, conveying secrets, lies, and the ever-present danger lurking around every corner. This play of light and dark is visually striking and psychologically effective. It makes you feel the tension, the paranoia, and the claustrophobia of Gotti's world. The lighting also pays homage to classic noir and gangster films, using these stylistic cues to remind us that this story is part of a larger cinematic tradition of crime and power. Framing choices throughout Gotti are deliberate and layered with meaning. The cinematographer uses tight, claustrophobic framing during scenes of confrontation, whether in a courtroom or a prison visitation, making characters seem boxed in or trapped by their circumstances. This visual claustrophobia intensifies the drama, putting you in the emotional space of the characters who are fighting battles with both the law and their own consciences. By contrast, wide shots are employed strategically to show the vastness of Gotti's reach, cityscapes sprawling with traffic, crowds of followers, opulent interiors filled with suits and luxury. These grand visuals reinforce the scale of his empire and influence. One striking framing technique that recurs is the use of doorways, windows, and mirrors as frames within frames. Characters are often shown through doorways or reflected in glass, symbolizing their entrapment or duality. For example, Gotti behind prison bars seen through a window, or a tense conversation framed by a doorway, suggests that these people are caught between worlds, freedom and confinement, truth and deception, family loyalty and criminal code. These visual metaphors add a poetic depth to what might otherwise be straightforward scenes, inviting the viewer to look beyond the surface. Visually memorable moments abound. Take the slow-motion sequence where Gotti walks through a sea of reporters, flashing cameras, and shouting voices. The world around him blurs and spins in chaotic motion, but Gotti moves like a statue, calm and imperturbable. The camera circles him, capturing every detail of his face and posture, turning the scene into a surreal, almost mythic entrance. This visual celebration of his persona captures the way the media and public saw him, not just as a man, but as a force of nature, a king walking among mortals. Courtroom scenes also gain from inventive cinematography. While legal battles can easily become static and dull, Gotti energizes these sequences with close-ups on hands slamming desks, eyes locked in intense gazes, and quick cuts that ratchet up the tension. The camera doesn't just document the action, it amplifies it, making these battles feel like gladiatorial contests where every word and glance carries weight. This dynamic visual style keeps you invested even when the dialogue is heavy with legal jargon. Prison scenes, on the other hand, use a slower, more deliberate camera rhythm, with muted colors and cold lighting that underscore the bleakness of Gotti's decline. Shots through bars, reflections in cracked glass, and close-ups on bruised faces all combine to create a suffocating atmosphere. The cinematography here contrasts sharply with the earlier glitz and glamour, marking a visual shift from the height of power to the depths of isolation. You feel the cost of the lifestyle Gotti led. The film also uses handheld camera work and quick cuts during moments of chaos, violent confrontations, escapes, or sudden betrayals, placing you right in the middle of the action. These kinetic sequences feel raw and immediate, pulling you into the intensity of the moment. It's a clever contrast to the more polished, static shots used in calmer scenes, and it creates a visual rhythm that keeps the audience on their toes. Throughout Gotti, the cinematography acts as a bridge between myth and reality. It embraces the legend's grandeur while never losing sight of the man beneath the headlines. The camera work is loud when it needs to be, intimate when it must be, and always visually striking. It's a cinematic heartbeat that drives the film forward and pulls you deeper into a story where every glance, shadow, and frame counts. For a movie about a man larger than life, the cinematography rises to the challenge, making sure you don't just hear the legend. You see it, feel it, and live it. Alright, let's dive even deeper into the editing and pacing of Gotti, because this is where the film really tries to master the art of storytelling rhythm, juggling decades of a mobster's life with all its chaos, drama, and emotional weight. Editing is like the invisible puppeteer pulling the strings behind the scenes, deciding when you speed up, when you slow down, and how smoothly you move from one moment to the next. And in a movie about someone as larger than life as John Gotti, that rhythm can either pull you in or leave you tapping your watch. Right off the bat, the editors set the tone with a pace that aims to mirror Gotti's whirlwind lifestyle. The film isn't content to linger too long in one place. It hops across time, locations, and story arcs like a fast-moving bullet train. You're swept up in this rush of scenes, showing Gotti's rise from an ambitious street kid to a powerful mob boss. The quick cuts during these sequences keep the momentum going, so you feel the excitement and danger as his world expands. It's a visual sprint that matches the adrenaline of his criminal hustle, giving you the sense that everything's moving fast and the stakes couldn't be higher. But this breathless pace has its pitfalls. The editing sometimes zooms through key emotional beats or complex plot points so quickly that you barely get a chance to fully process what's happening. It's like watching highlights instead of the full game. You get the big plays, but some of the nuance and character depth get lost in the shuffle. Certain scenes that could have benefited from a slower pace, allowing tension to simmer or feelings to develop, get cut short or squeezed between more action-heavy moments. This can make parts of the movie feel a bit rushed or patchy, as if the story is ticking off a checklist rather than inviting you to truly live in its world. On the flip side, the film does know when to slow down and let moments breathe. Intimate conversations, family dynamics, and character-driven scenes often use longer takes and more measured pacing. Here, the editing pulls back from the breakneck speed and lets the actors' performances and the dialogue carry the weight. These slower moments create necessary emotional pauses where you can connect with the characters on a human level, where Gotti isn't just a headline but a husband, father, and flawed man facing the consequences of his choices. It's a delicate balancing act, and while the film doesn't always get it perfectly right, these scenes add important texture and depth to the overall narrative. The courtroom scenes are a masterclass in rhythmic editing. Here, the editors employ sharp cross-cutting, moving quickly between the tense exchanges of lawyers, witness testimonies, and the reactions of the jury and spectators. These cuts heighten the drama and urgency, turning legal battles into gripping, edge-of-your-seat showdowns. The pacing in these sequences perfectly captures the cat-and-mouse game of courtroom maneuvering, making what could be a dry procedural into a tense thriller. The rhythm here is almost musical, each cut, reaction, and pause carefully timed to maximize suspense. Montage sequences play a vital role in managing the film's sprawling timeline. These are fast-paced visual collages that cram years of events into just a few minutes, often accompanied by voiceovers or music. They're effective in conveying the rapid expansion of Gotti's empire, his media notoriety, and the relentless pressure from law enforcement. These montages keep the story moving without overwhelming the audience with details, giving you the big picture in a digestible and energetic format. They feel like flipping through the headlines or tuning into news reports, which fits well with the movie's blend of myth and reality. Transitions between scenes deserve special mention because they work hard to maintain narrative flow. Rather than jolting you from one moment to the next, the film uses creative bridges, like continuing voiceovers, sounds that carry over, or visual cues that link scenes together. This smooth stitching helps the sprawling story feel more cohesive and less like a series of disconnected episodes. It's the kind of subtle editing magic that keeps you immersed without you even noticing how the story moves from one place or time to another. Dialogue-heavy scenes reveal another layer of pacing complexity. When characters engage in intense, often emotionally charged conversations, the editing opts for fewer cuts and longer shots. This choice lets the performances breathe and the tension build naturally. But sometimes this slower pace stands out against the film's otherwise brisk rhythm, creating a push-pull effect. It's like the movie is sprinting in some parts and jogging in others, which can be slightly jarring but also adds a dynamic quality to the viewing experience. These shifts in tempo keep you alert, never quite settling into a predictable pattern. Emotionally, the editing acts like a tide, pulling you in with surges of energy during chaotic or dangerous moments, and then receding to let you catch your breath during quieter, more reflective scenes. This ebb and flow mirror Gotti's own life, which alternated between explosive public clashes and private struggles. When the pace speeds up during raids, media storms, or mob conflicts, you feel the adrenaline and chaos. When it slows during family dinners, prison visits, or moments of doubt, you get a glimpse of the man behind the headlines. Sometimes, though, the pacing struggles under the weight of the film's ambition. With so much ground to cover, the rise, fall, personal relationships, legal battles, and media circus, It can feel like the story is racing against the clock to fit everything in. This results in some moments feeling crammed or underdeveloped, while others drag longer than necessary. It's the classic sprawling biopic problem, trying to be comprehensive but occasionally sacrificing depth for breadth. Still, the editing mostly manages to keep the narrative moving forward with energy, which is no small feat given the complexity of Gotti's life. In moments of chaos and violence, the editing embraces a frenetic style. Handheld camera cuts, quick zooms, and jump cuts inject immediacy and rawness. These sequences make you feel like you're in the thick of the action, caught up in the danger and unpredictability of mob life. The rapid pacing here contrasts beautifully with the more composed scenes, creating a rhythm that mimics the unpredictability of Gotti's world, a life that could go from calm to explosive in seconds. So, the editing and pacing in Gotti are a wild ride themselves, sometimes a high-speed chase, sometimes a slow burn, and occasionally a bumpy detour. It's a rhythm that tries to capture the frenetic energy, the emotional weight, and the sprawling scope of John Gotti's life story. While it doesn't always hit the perfect tempo, it keeps you engaged and moving through a story that is as much about legend as it is about the man behind the myth. It's an essential piece of the puzzle, giving the film its heartbeat and pulse, keeping you hooked from start to finish. Let's take a deep dive into the soundtrack and score of Gotti, because this is where the film's emotional and atmospheric layers really come alive in a way that's subtle but incredibly effective. The music doesn't just sit in the background, it breathes life into every scene, heightening tension, adding texture, and sometimes even telling its own story alongside the visuals. If the film were a novel, the soundtrack would be the author's voice, guiding you through the chaos, the drama, and the quieter moments with equal finesse. Right from the opening moments, the score sets a tone that's far from generic. It's not your typical gangster movie soundtrack, filled with the usual brass-heavy or over-the-top orchestrations. Instead, it's grounded and brooding, full of dark, moody sounds that perfectly capture the dangerous, unpredictable world John Gotti inhabits. There's a constant undercurrent of unease, low, haunting strings, deep bass pulses, and ominous synths that sneak up on you. This isn't flashy music. It's the kind that creeps under your skin, subtly reminding you that beneath the surface glamour and power lies a world of tension, betrayal, and violence. What's fascinating is how the score plays with dynamics and pacing, much like the film itself. During quieter, more intimate scenes, the music pulls back to almost a whisper, letting you focus on the raw emotions playing out between characters. Here, gentle piano notes or a solitary violin might float in, lending a melancholy or reflective mood that draws you deeper into Gotti's personal struggles, his family conflicts, moments of doubt, or the weight of his choices. These softer touches aren't just filler, they create emotional space and highlight the humanity beneath the mob boss's tough exterior. Then, when the action ramps up or tension spikes, the score shifts gears without missing a beat. The music grows louder, faster, more urgent. Sharp percussion, driving rhythms, and swirling strings push the adrenaline higher, syncing perfectly with gunfights, police raids, or heated confrontations. It's almost cinematic choreography, music and visuals moving in tandem to make those moments feel more visceral and intense. This dynamic range keeps the audience hooked, moving effortlessly between suspense and emotional depth. Recurring musical motifs are another clever tool used in the soundtrack to bind the sprawling narrative together. Certain themes appear at multiple points, sometimes tweaked or layered differently depending on the scene's tone. For example, a dark, brooding melody might surface during a tense family discussion and then reappear during a courtroom showdown, creating a musical thread that connects Gotti's personal and public battles. These motifs work like emotional bookmarks, grounding you in the story and reminding you of the stakes involved, no matter how far the timeline jumps. Interestingly, the film also uses silence as a powerful counterpoint to its musical moments. There are several key scenes where the absence of music amplifies the tension and drama. In these moments, the sound design steps up. Every creak of a floorboard, every whispered word, every nervous breath becomes heightened. The silence stretches, almost forcing you to lean in and engage more deeply. This strategic use of quiet moments is a brilliant way to build suspense and emotional intensity without relying on a musical score, making the eventual return of music even more impactful. The song choices sprinkled throughout the film deserve their own spotlight. Rather than just tossing in popular tracks for commercial appeal, the soundtrack includes songs that feel carefully chosen to reflect the era, mood, and themes of the story. Whether it's gritty rock underscoring street scenes or soulful ballads during family moments, the music adds an extra layer of authenticity and atmosphere. These tracks help anchor the film in a specific time and place, while also giving insight into the characters' emotional states and the culture swirling around them. One of the most impressive feats of the soundtrack and score is how seamlessly they blend with the film's sound effects and dialogue. The music never overpowers the scene or competes with the actors' performances. Instead, it slides in and out, sometimes lurking just beneath the surface, other times swelling to highlight a dramatic peak. This careful balancing act means the soundtrack supports the storytelling without ever becoming a distraction, a challenge that many films struggle to master. In fast-paced action or tense sequences, the music's rhythm often matches the editing, creating a perfect synergy that enhances the excitement and urgency. Rapid beats and sharp staccato notes sync with quick cuts, chase scenes, or intense conversations, turning the scenes into almost a dance of sound and motion. Conversely, during moments of loss, regret, or reflection, the score slows, becoming more melodic and somber, pulling you into the emotional core of the story. The overall effect is that the soundtrack and score don't just accompany the film, they elevate it. They add a dimension of mood and emotion that might otherwise be missing, helping the audience feel the weight of Gotti's choices, the danger lurking around every corner, and the complicated humanity at the heart of this notorious figure. It's a soundtrack that's as layered and nuanced as the story itself, full of tension, drama, and moments of quiet reflection. In the end, the music in Gotti works like an unseen storyteller, guiding you through the film's twists and turns, amplifying the highs and lows, and leaving you with an emotional resonance long after the credits roll. It's a crucial piece of the movie's puzzle, wrapping the narrative in sound and emotion, and making the whole experience richer, more immersive, and undeniably compelling. Alright, let's dive even deeper into the swirling sea of themes and messages that Gotti lays out, because this film isn't just about guns, money, and mob boss swagger. It's packed with layers that invite you to think, feel, and sometimes even squirm in your seat. What makes it so intriguing is how it balances the gritty gangster world with some surprisingly profound questions about life, power, and what it means to be human. So buckle up, because the thematic ride here is anything but boring. Starting with power, the big, flashy kind that everyone thinks about when they picture a mob boss. The film really digs into the idea that power isn't just about control or fear, it's a living, breathing force that changes people. Gotti's rise shows how power can be intoxicating, a rush that makes you feel invincible, like you're untouchable. But the film doesn't sugarcoat it. Alongside the glamour of the throne sits paranoia, constant threats, and a gnawing isolation. Gotti's power isolates him from the people who matter most, his family, his friends, even himself. The movie carefully shows that power is like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. One wrong move, and everything falls apart. It's a brutal, unforgiving landscape that mirrors real life in a way many gangster flicks gloss over. And that dual nature of power, both seductive and destructive, keeps the tension humming throughout the film. Then there's the tangled web of family loyalty, which is anything but simple here. This isn't your cozy family sitcom. It's raw, complicated, and sometimes painfully real. Family is presented as the glue that holds Gotti's world together, but also as a source of immense pressure and conflict. The film explores how loyalty to family can be a double-edged sword. It can inspire incredible acts of protection and sacrifice, but also blind people to hard truths and lead them into dangerous territory. Watching Gotti navigate his roles as a husband, father, and crime boss reveals how these responsibilities clash and converge. His family isn't just a support system, it's part of the business, part of the legacy, and part of the risk. The film doesn't shy away from the moral ambiguities here. Sometimes the right thing for the family might be the wrong thing for society, and vice versa. This layered portrayal makes the family theme resonate on many levels, making you think about how far people will go to protect their own, and at what cost. Speaking of cost, the film offers a gritty commentary on the American dream. At face value, Gotti's story looks like the classic tale of a scrappy underdog climbing the ladder to success. But Gotti flips that narrative on its head, showing the darker, more complicated side of ambition. Here, the dream is wrapped up in crime, corruption, and moral compromise. The movie challenges the idea that success is purely positive. What does it mean to achieve the American dream when your empire is built on violence and fear? This theme pushes viewers to question the myth of meritocracy and success in America, highlighting how the path to power can be riddled with ethical pitfalls and societal damage. It's a sobering look at ambition, wrapped in the high-stakes world of organized crime. Justice and morality weave through the film like an invisible yet inescapable thread. The movie refuses to paint the world in black and white, instead dwelling in the messy gray areas where the law, ethics, and personal survival collide. Gotti himself is portrayed neither as a pure villain nor a hero, but as a complex human navigating a treacherous landscape where choices aren't clear-cut. The film raises questions about what justice really means when dealing with people who operate outside the law but have their own codes and values. It also probes the effectiveness and fairness of the legal system. Does it really catch the bad guys, or just play a part in a bigger game? This exploration of morality invites you to sit with uncomfortable questions and reflect on the blurry lines between right and wrong, guilt and innocence. Legacy is another weighty theme that runs like a current beneath the surface. Gotti's decisions aren't just about the moment, they're about what he leaves behind. The film explores how the desire to be remembered and to create something lasting can drive people to extremes. But it also shows the heavy burden of legacy, the way a reputation can haunt you and your family long after the battles are over. This theme adds a haunting quality to the story, as you see characters wrestle with the idea that their actions echo far beyond their lifetimes, shaping not just their own fates but the world around them. It asks the question, what kind of legacy is worth pursuing, and what are we willing to sacrifice for it? And then there's identity, the film's take on how Gotti juggles multiple, often conflicting selves. The man who commands respect on the streets isn't the same man at home with his family, nor the same one facing the cold stare of the courtroom. This fractured identity adds psychological depth to the story, showing how Gotti wears different masks to survive and thrive. It's a meditation on the human condition itself, how we all present different versions of ourselves depending on context and need. This theme resonates because it reminds us that beneath every public persona is a complex, often contradictory human being. What's brilliant is how the film blends these themes organically into the story, rather than forcing them on the audience. Sometimes they hit you over the head, sure, but more often they simmer quietly, woven through dialogue, character interactions, and the very structure of the narrative. This lets you engage with the ideas on your own terms. Maybe you'll focus on the family drama, or maybe the moral questions will stick with you long after the credits. The film trusts its audience enough to let these themes unfold naturally, which makes the viewing experience richer and more thought-provoking. All this thematic richness doesn't just sit there. It pulses through the characters and their choices, making the story feel alive and relevant. It makes you wonder what you'd do if you were in Gotti's shoes, facing impossible choices with high stakes. It invites you to reflect on the broader societal issues around crime, justice, ambition, and family. And that's what gives Gotti a resonance that goes beyond the usual crime movie fare. It becomes a story that's messy, human, and surprisingly deep. So, when you watch Gotti, don't just think about the action or the drama. Keep an eye out for these swirling themes and questions lurking just beneath the surface. They're what give the film its bite and its staying power, turning a story about a notorious mob boss into something that sticks with you, makes you think, and maybe even challenges how you see the world. When it comes to visual effects and CGI in Gotti, the film takes a much more grounded and understated approach compared to the typical flashy, in-your-face effects that dominate many modern movies. This is a crime drama rooted firmly in reality, a story about real people, real places, and very human conflicts. So naturally, the effects team leans into subtlety and practicality rather than spectacle. The result is a set of visual effects that work almost invisibly, enhancing the film's world without ever drawing unwanted attention to themselves, which in this case is exactly what the film needs to maintain its immersive and gritty atmosphere. The first thing you notice is how naturally the visual effects blend into the everyday settings of the film. This is a movie set mostly in New York, from the streets to offices to dimly lit rooms where deals are made and lives unravel. The VFX aren't about flashy explosions or jaw-dropping transformations, but about quietly expanding and enriching the environments. For example, when the camera pans over cityscapes or zooms into tight neighborhoods, subtle digital extensions of the skyline or background fill out the frame, making the urban environment feel alive and sprawling. These enhancements aren't overt. They don't pop or look artificial, but instead work behind the scenes to give you a believable sense of place, which is crucial when the city itself feels like another character in the story. The film's commitment to practical effects is another highlight in this department. Instead of relying heavily on CGI for action sequences like shootouts or violent confrontations, Gotti embraces old-school techniques. The use of practical squibs, those little controlled explosions that simulate bullet impacts, and real props grounds the action in a tactile reality. You feel the physicality of each scene, the crack of a gunshot, the ricochet of a bullet, the stumble of a body falling. This approach adds a rawness and immediacy to the violence, making it more visceral and unsettling than the sometimes sanitized or overly slick CGI equivalents found in other films. The practical effects remind you that this world is dangerous and unforgiving, and that the stakes for the characters are frighteningly real. Where CGI does come into play, it's mostly as a subtle enhancer rather than the star of the show. Digital effects are used to clean up shots, extend locations, or create atmospheric touches like smoke curling in a shadowy room or the flicker of a neon sign at night. These digital flourishes are integrated so seamlessly that you hardly notice them consciously, but they do a lot of heavy lifting in setting mood and tone. For instance, a car chase might be extended digitally to maintain a sense of speed and urgency, or a fire might be augmented to look more intense without compromising safety on set. These enhancements never overwhelm the scene. Instead, they add polish and depth while preserving the grounded feel of the film. One of the trickier tasks for the visual effects team was recreating the time period authentically without resorting to over-the-top digital trickery. The movie spans several decades, so the VFX helps subtly update environments to fit the era, adjusting storefronts, street signs, cars, and other background details to reflect changing times. But again, these digital touches are carefully measured, so they feel natural and effortless. They support the storytelling by immersing the audience in the period without ever calling attention to the fact that what we're seeing has been digitally manipulated. This craftsmanship in blending digital and practical elements is impressive because it's so easy for period effects to look fake or distracting when done poorly. Another interesting angle is how the film's visual effects respect the characters and the story above all else. There are no flashy CGI gimmicks or surreal visual moments. Everything serves the narrative and emotional beats. This restraint means the audience stays focused on the characters' struggles, the tension of the scenes, and the drama unfolding without being pulled out by distracting effects. It's a smart choice because Gotti is a character-driven drama, not a visual effects showcase. The subtle visual effects underscore this approach by enhancing atmosphere, period accuracy, and immersion rather than trying to dazzle. If you're someone who usually expects blockbuster-style CGI extravaganzas, Gotti might feel almost minimalist in its effects department. But that's the beauty of it. The effects are there when you need them, doing the heavy lifting quietly in the background. They support the gritty realism of the film's world, help build tension, and create a sense of authenticity that's vital for this kind of biographical crime drama. In short, the visual effects and CGI in Gotti work like a well-oiled backstage crew. They're invisible in the best way possible, never flashy, never intrusive, always serving the story. Whether it's extending New York's cityscape, adding atmospheric touches, or enhancing practical effects, the digital and practical effects come together in a seamless blend that keeps you glued to the story and fully immersed in the world of John Gotti. This kind of effects work is a reminder that sometimes the best visual effects aren't the ones that shout for attention, but the ones that quietly make everything feel just right. When it comes to set design and locations, Gotti doesn't just settle for basic backdrops or generic cityscapes. It truly immerses you in a world that feels authentic, lived in, and charged with atmosphere. The production design team went all out to build a visually compelling environment that feels like a snapshot of New York's mob underworld across several decades, and the results are impressive. This isn't just about filling the screen with pretty visuals, It's about crafting a tangible space where the story breathes, and every detail helps tell us more about the characters, their lives, and the power dynamics at play. First off, the neighborhoods and streets we see aren't some vague urban placeholder. The film's locations pulse with life and history: gritty alleyways, neon-lit diners, cramped apartments with peeling wallpaper, and smoky backrooms filled with tense conversations. These settings create an immersive mood that puts you right in the middle of a working-class world that's both tough and vibrant. The way the film captures the texture of these places, grime on the sidewalks, the chatter of street vendors, flickering street lamps, adds a layer of realism that's hard to fake on a soundstage or with CGI alone. Walking through these locations with the characters, you get a sense of the weight of the city's influence on their lives, almost like you can feel the pulse of New York's heartbeat under the pavement. The production design doesn't stop at just locations. It extends deeply into the props and set dressing, which are incredibly detailed and thoughtfully chosen. Every item feels like it's been plucked right out of the era and culture the film explores. Take the cars, for example. The classic models rolling through the streets aren't just vehicles, they're symbols of status, power, and identity. They transport the audience back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s with authenticity. Then there are the small but telling props: rotary phones that ring with an ominous tone, thick stacks of paper and ledgers that hint at the business side of crime, and the glint of firearms tucked away in shadowy corners. Even the food on the table and the bottles lining the bar shelves are carefully selected to ground the scenes in a specific place and time, reinforcing the cultural setting. One of the film's major strengths is how it uses location and design to visually narrate Gotti's rise and fall. Early on, the settings are modest and somewhat chaotic, reflecting the hustle and scramble of a man climbing the ranks. As the story progresses, the environments become more polished, more imposing. Offices grow grander, suits get sharper, and homes more lavish. This gradual shift is subtle but powerful, showing the transformation of a man who goes from street hustler to mob boss with considerable influence. The physical spaces mirror the internal changes and ambitions of the characters, making the set design an active storytelling partner rather than just a background player. Filming on location in New York also adds an unmistakable layer of authenticity. The city itself feels like a living, breathing character, and you can see that the filmmakers carefully chose spots that embody the culture and tensions of the era. Whether it's a noisy Italian restaurant filled with animated conversation or a quiet suburban home where family drama unfolds, these locations are rich with texture. They ground the film's dramatic moments in a believable reality, creating a world that feels fully formed and lived in. Lighting and color schemes are key players in the production design's storytelling toolkit as well. The film uses warmer, golden tones for scenes focused on family, loyalty, or quieter moments, evoking a sense of intimacy and sometimes nostalgia. In contrast, the scenes involving confrontation, violence, or political maneuvering often feature colder, harsher lighting with deep shadows, which creates a visual tension that reinforces the stakes. These choices work together to shape the film's mood on a scene-by-scene basis, giving you visual cues about how to feel even before the dialogue kicks in. Another cool aspect is how the set design reflects the passing of time without ever feeling forced or gimmicky. The details evolve naturally. The fashion, technology, and interior design change subtly but consistently from the 70s to the 90s. This evolution helps you track the narrative's timeline effortlessly and adds to the film's overall credibility. It's impressive how the designers managed to balance historical accuracy with cinematic style, making sure the sets look great on screen while still feeling lived in and believable. Even the smaller, more everyday spaces get plenty of attention. Places like barbershops, diners, and community halls aren't just filler locations, they add texture and dimension to the story world. These venues reveal the social fabric of the characters' lives, the places where deals are whispered, loyalties tested, and alliances formed. They feel authentic and help round out the movie's portrayal of the mob's ecosystem, showing that the world of Gotti is more than just crime. It's about community, family, and culture. The production design also walks a fine line between stark realism and cinematic flair. While the sets are rooted in reality, there's a certain visual polish and composition that keeps the film visually engaging. It's not a documentary, but a carefully crafted narrative world where every visual choice serves a purpose, to deepen character, build tension, or highlight themes. Overall, the set design and locations in Gotti work in perfect harmony to pull the audience into the film's intense and complex world. They're not just settings, they're active, breathing parts of a story that add depth, authenticity, and emotional weight. Whether it's the gritty streets of New York or the richly detailed interiors, every element is carefully chosen and beautifully executed to create an immersive experience that lingers long after the credits roll. The dialogue and script in Gotti stand out as some of the film's most vibrant and compelling elements, weaving together a tapestry of language that feels both raw and meticulously crafted. From the very first scenes, it's clear the writers aim to capture the authentic cadence of New York's mob world, where every word carries weight, and silence often speaks louder than speech. This isn't your typical Hollywood gangster banter filled with cliches and predictable one-liners. Instead, the conversations pulse with life, carrying the grime, tension, and toughness of the neighborhoods where these characters were born and bred. What's truly impressive is how the dialogue strikes a balance between harsh, gritty street talk and moments of surprising tenderness or introspection. You'll hear the blunt, sometimes brutal language of men who deal in power and violence, but just as often, the script lets those same characters reveal cracks in their armor. For instance, when John Gotti speaks with family members or trusted allies, the tone can shift from commanding and ruthless to deeply personal and protective. These moments add layers to the characters, making them feel like real people struggling with conflicting emotions, loyalty to family, ambition, fear, and pride, all mixed into the volatile world they inhabit. The script is loaded with memorable lines that linger in your mind long after the scene ends. Some are sharp and biting, dripping with menace or dark humor, while others carry emotional weight that underscores the film's deeper themes. These lines aren't just there for dramatic flair, they encapsulate the core struggles of power, loyalty, and survival. For example, there are moments when Gotti's words cut through the noise with chilling clarity, laying bare the costs of his choices and the ruthless logic of the mob world. These standout lines help define the film's tone, grounding it in a sense of gritty realism while also elevating it to something almost mythic. Another fascinating aspect of the script is its rhythm and pacing. The dialogue doesn't just relay information, it flows with a natural cadence that mirrors real conversation. Characters interrupt each other, pause meaningfully, and use tone to add subtext, making each exchange feel dynamic and layered. This rhythm keeps scenes engaging, whether it's a tense negotiation or a casual family dinner. It also reinforces the film's atmosphere, allowing the audience to feel the underlying tensions simmering beneath the surface like a coiled spring ready to snap. The writers cleverly use dialogue to reveal the complex power dynamics at play. Often, what's unsaid is just as important as what's spoken. Characters wield words as weapons or shields, negotiating alliances and asserting dominance without ever spelling everything out explicitly. This chess-like interplay of language keeps you on your toes, constantly reading between the lines to catch the real intentions and threats lurking beneath polite phrases or seemingly casual remarks. This subtlety adds depth to the storytelling, making the conversations feel like strategic battles as much as exchanges of information. Emotional moments in the script are handled with surprising delicacy, given the tough exterior of the subject matter. Scenes involving family disputes, betrayals, or moments of loss are written with a keen understanding of human complexity. Here, the dialogue softens, revealing vulnerability and pain behind the hardened exteriors. These are the moments where the writing shines brightest, reminding us that beneath the mobster bravado lie people grappling with love, regret, and the consequences of their choices. The emotional honesty in these exchanges adds a layer of poignancy that enriches the film's narrative and makes the characters more relatable. In addition to drama and tension, the script smartly sprinkles in moments of wit and dry humor. These bits of sharp, clever banter provide relief from the film's darker themes and showcase the characters' intelligence and street savvy. The humor never feels out of place or forced. Instead, it highlights the resilience and quick thinking necessary to survive in a world where danger lurks around every corner. These lighter moments also humanize the characters, making them more three-dimensional and easier to connect with. The dialogue's authenticity is further enhanced by how it reflects the cultural and social environment of the characters. The script captures the nuances of New York's working-class neighborhoods, including the mix of pride, tradition, and tension that defines their interactions. Whether it's family members debating loyalty or rivals sizing each other up, the language feels deeply rooted in the world the film portrays, lending it a sense of credibility that's often missing in crime dramas. The writing also respects the complexity of its central figure, John Gotti, avoiding simple caricature or glorification. Through the dialogue, we see a man who is both charismatic and ruthless, confident yet burdened by the weight of his choices. The script doesn't shy away from showing the contradictions and conflicts within Gotti, using language to reveal his ambition, fears, and moments of doubt. This nuanced portrayal adds richness to the character and keeps the audience invested in his story. Overall, the script for Gotti is a masterclass in balancing gritty realism with emotional depth and narrative momentum. It captures the harshness of the mob world while also exploring the humanity beneath it, all through dialogue that is sharp, natural, and packed with meaning. The conversations crackle with tension, reveal character, and drive the plot forward, making the script one of the film's most compelling features. Whether it's a quick, loaded exchange or a longer, more introspective scene, the writing keeps you hooked by offering layers of insight, humor, and drama that enrich the cinematic experience. The dialogue and script in Gotti really stand out as a core pillar that holds the entire film together, shaping the mood, pacing, and emotional resonance throughout. From the very beginning, the script establishes a tone that's gritty and raw, reflecting the harsh realities of mob life while never losing sight of the human drama at its heart. The conversations feel authentic and lived in, as if you've been dropped right into the smoky back rooms and crowded family dinners where these men operate. It's not just about what's said, it's about how it's said, the pauses, the undercurrents of tension and unspoken meaning that ripple beneath the surface. One of the most striking things about the dialogue is how it captures the texture of real life in a way that feels natural rather than scripted. The characters don't just deliver lines, they inhabit them. The language shifts effortlessly between business and family, between brutality and tenderness, showing the many sides of a world where loyalty and violence are two sides of the same coin. When John Gotti commands a room, his words carry the weight of authority and danger, sharp and precise like a weapon. But then, in quieter moments with his loved ones, the script softens, revealing vulnerability and a complicated emotional core beneath the tough exterior. This contrast adds depth and nuance, turning what could be a one-dimensional crime figure into a layered, compelling character. Memorability is a huge strength of the script. It's peppered with lines that are both impactful and unforgettable, some dripping with menace, others laced with dark humor or poignant insight. These moments give the film personality and punch. They're not just filler, they reveal character, advance the story, and often pack a thematic punch that resonates beyond the immediate scene. The writers clearly understand the power of a well-crafted line, and they use dialogue not just as exposition, but as a tool to build atmosphere and tension. The rhythm of the dialogue is another highlight. The way conversations unfold, sometimes clipped and tense, other times flowing and loaded with subtext, mirrors the ebb and flow of real interactions. This natural cadence keeps scenes dynamic and engaging, whether it's a high-stakes negotiation, a family argument, or a casual moment that suddenly turns charged. The pacing of dialogue helps set the tone, building suspense or releasing it, sharpening conflict or deepening intimacy. It's a living, breathing part of the film's storytelling engine. Beyond just delivering plot and character, the dialogue cleverly reveals the shifting power dynamics that are central to the story. Much of what's communicated happens below the surface, through implication, tone, and choice of words. The characters often engage in a verbal dance, testing boundaries, asserting dominance, or masking true intentions with coded language. This adds a layer of complexity and intrigue, turning conversations into strategic battles as much as exchanges of information. For viewers, it's a challenge and a thrill to decode what's really being said, which deepens engagement and rewards close attention. Emotional depth is woven throughout the script, particularly in scenes exploring family relationships and personal struggles. The dialogue here is charged with real feeling, fear, love, regret, pride, all tangled up in the characters' attempts to navigate loyalty to blood and loyalty to their criminal empire. These moments bring heart to the story, preventing it from becoming a simple crime saga and instead offering a poignant look at the human cost behind the headlines. The writing shines in these quieter, more intimate scenes, capturing the fragility and complexity of family bonds under extraordinary pressure. At the same time, the script smartly injects moments of wit and dark humor that add texture and relief. These lines aren't just comic breaks, they reveal character savvy, street smarts, and a toughness that comes with surviving in a brutal world. The humor feels earned and organic, helping to humanize the characters and keep the tone balanced without undercutting the stakes. Culturally and socially, the dialogue roots the film firmly in its setting, New York's working-class neighborhoods, where pride, tradition, and tension shape every interaction. The script captures this environment authentically, from slang and mannerisms to the way people speak about family and power. This grounding lends credibility and richness, making the film's world feel lived in and convincing rather than generic. Importantly, the script resists turning John Gotti into a simplistic legend or villain. Through the dialogue, the writing exposes his contradictions, charisma and cruelty, confidence and insecurity, ambition and regret. This nuanced portrayal offers a more complex, humanized picture that avoids easy judgments or glorification, inviting the audience to grapple with the man behind the myth. All told, the dialogue and script in Gotti operate on multiple levels. They advance the plot, develop character, build atmosphere, and explore themes with intelligence and care. The writing is sharp and authentic, balancing brutality and tenderness, wit and pathos, clarity and subtext. Whether it's a terse threat, a heartfelt confession, or a moment of sly humor, each line feels purposeful and alive, making the script a vital, compelling heartbeat at the center of the film's storytelling. When we really start unpacking the social and cultural commentary in Gotti, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. There's more beneath the surface than just the gangster drama and criminal escapades. On the outside, it's easy to see Gotti as another crime biopic centered on the rise and fall of a notorious mob boss, but if you look closer, the film subtly dives into some pretty meaningful reflections on identity, power, community, and the American experience, all wrapped in the gritty realities of a very particular cultural setting. First off, the depiction of the Italian-American working-class world isn't just window dressing. It's an immersive look at a community shaped by tradition, pride, and survival instincts. The film paints a portrait of neighborhoods where family ties run deep and loyalty isn't just expected, it's the currency of life. This cultural backdrop feels authentic and rich, offering more than just a setting. It's a key to understanding why these characters operate the way they do. The way respect and honor are handed down, the emphasis on family reputation, the struggle to make a name in a society that often marginalizes them, all of this shapes the motivations and conflicts in the story. It's a glimpse into a world where social status isn't handed out freely, and power often has to be seized, sometimes by any means necessary. This idea ties into one of the film's deeper threads, the immigrant's pursuit of the American dream, but with a dark twist. Instead of the traditional rags-to-riches success through honest work, the characters here find themselves navigating a world where opportunities are scarce and the system feels stacked against them. The film doesn't shy away from showing how some turn to organized crime as a way to claim power, respect, and security. This is not a glamorization, but a raw portrayal of how marginalized communities might push against societal limits when legitimate routes seem blocked or slow-moving. It's a complex reflection on ambition and the cost of climbing the social ladder through shadowy paths, which raises questions about justice, inequality, and the elusive nature of the dream for many Americans. Politics and the justice system play a quietly powerful role in the film's social commentary. Through Gotti's courtroom battles and interactions with law enforcement, the movie touches on the murky intersection of crime, media, and the law. It suggests a system that's complicated, sometimes corrupt, and often influenced by spectacle rather than pure justice. The media frenzy around Gotti, which the film captures well, underscores how public opinion can be shaped by sensational headlines and personality cults, rather than facts alone. This theme probes the idea that fame and infamy are two sides of the same coin, and that justice can be as much about image as it is about truth. The film's take on this isn't heavy-handed. Instead, It invites the audience to question how narratives are constructed and who benefits from them. Another rich vein the film explores is masculinity and power culture. In Gotti, being a man isn't just about brute strength or intimidation, it's about reputation, control, and the ability to command respect, whether through fear or loyalty. This cultural expectation weighs heavily on the characters, influencing their decisions and their self-worth. The film shows how this form of masculinity can be both empowering and destructive, shaping lives in ways that are often tragic. It's a commentary on the pressures men face within certain communities to uphold a tough exterior, sometimes at the cost of emotional vulnerability or moral compromise. This adds a layer of psychological complexity that helps humanize the characters beyond their criminal identities. The cultural roots and social environment feel completely organic to the narrative, not inserted just to tick thematic boxes. They arise naturally from the characters' interactions and the world they inhabit, which makes the film's social commentary feel more authentic and impactful. It's not preachy or forced, but rather woven seamlessly into the story's fabric. The challenges faced by the characters reflect broader societal issues, economic hardship, marginalization, cultural pride, that anyone paying attention can relate to or understand better through the lens of this specific story. There's also a subtle but important commentary on family dynamics and the intersection of personal and social identity. The film shows how family loyalty often clashes with individual desires and moral dilemmas. This tension reflects larger social patterns, where community expectations can sometimes trap individuals in cycles of behavior that are difficult to break. The way Gotti presents these struggles elevates the film beyond simple crime storytelling into a meditation on the costs of allegiance, tradition, and survival. The media's role in shaping modern celebrity culture, especially around figures like Gotti, is another fascinating aspect. The film captures how a criminal figure can become a public icon, simultaneously feared and admired, partly because of how stories are spun by the press and consumed by the public. This commentary resonates in today's age of viral fame and sensationalism, making the story feel contemporary despite its historical setting. It highlights how notoriety and media attention can distort reality and influence justice, a theme that adds an extra layer of relevance and insight. Ultimately, Gotti acts as a prism reflecting complex social and cultural realities, immigration, identity, justice, masculinity, and media influence, without ever turning into a lecture or heavy-handed statement piece. These themes simmer beneath the surface, enriching the story and encouraging viewers to consider the bigger picture behind the mob saga. The film respects its audience's ability to pick up on these nuances while delivering a gripping narrative rooted in a very specific cultural moment. This approach gives Gotti a depth that rewards close attention and thoughtful reflection, proving that even the most familiar gangster story can carry powerful social and cultural messages when told with care and insight. When diving deeper into how Gotti engages its audience, it's clear the film works on multiple emotional and intellectual levels, making it far more than just a straightforward crime biopic. From the opening scenes, the film sets a tone that pulls viewers into a world that feels at once personal and epic. You're not just watching a story unfold, you're invited to live inside it with the characters, experiencing their triumphs, struggles, and tragedies as if they were part of your own extended family saga. This immersive quality is key to why the movie keeps audiences glued to the screen, emotionally invested in the roller coaster ride of loyalty, power, and consequence. One of the most compelling ways Gotti hooks its audience is through its emotional complexity. The film cleverly balances moments of warmth and intimacy, like family dinners or private conversations that reveal vulnerabilities, with sudden bursts of tension, violence, and high-stakes confrontations. This push and pull between tenderness and brutality creates a compelling emotional rhythm that keeps viewers on edge and deeply connected. You laugh with the characters, you're frustrated by their mistakes, you feel the weight of their losses, and you cheer when they find small victories. This emotional investment isn't accidental. It's the result of layered storytelling that treats its characters as fully realized human beings rather than caricatures. The character of John Gotti himself is central to this engagement. Portrayed with a mix of charisma, toughness, and complexity, Gotti isn't a simple villain or hero. He's a man with contradictions, flaws, and deep loyalties. This nuanced portrayal invites viewers to grapple with their feelings about him, sometimes rooting for him despite his darker choices, other times recoiling at the consequences of his actions. That internal conflict within the audience creates a magnetic pull that makes watching the film an emotionally charged experience. You find yourself questioning morality, justice, and family allegiance in a way that sparks curiosity and empathy rather than judgment alone. The narrative also excels in generating moments that provoke strong, immediate reactions, those gasps, shocked silence, or bursts of laughter that signal true audience engagement. Scenes where tension snaps, unexpected plot twists land, or characters reveal hidden depths become memorable touchpoints that resonate well beyond the theater or living room. These moments are crafted with care through pacing, dialogue, and performance, ensuring that the audience is never just passively consuming the story but actively feeling it. The film's ability to surprise and move its viewers keeps the emotional momentum flowing and prevents the story from ever feeling predictable or flat. Another fascinating element of Gotti's audience engagement is its invitation to reflection and discussion. The film doesn't hand you simple answers or neat moral conclusions. Instead, it thrives in ambiguity and complexity. Viewers are encouraged to consider difficult questions about the nature of loyalty, the price of ambition, and the blurry lines between right and wrong. This opens the door for rich conversations long after the movie ends, whether between friends, family, or online communities. It becomes more than entertainment. It becomes a catalyst for deeper thought about human nature, justice, and the societal systems that shape these stories. The layered narrative and complex character relationships also encourage repeat viewings. Each time you watch, new details emerge, subtle facial expressions, background conversations, or thematic echoes that add richness and depth. This makes the film rewarding to revisit, especially for those who appreciate nuanced storytelling and want to unpack the intricate dynamics at play. It's a film that grows on you, revealing more of its heart and complexity over time rather than losing impact after the first watch. Importantly, Gotti appeals to a broad audience spectrum. While fans of crime dramas and mob stories will find plenty to enjoy, the film's focus on family dynamics, emotional struggles, and identity makes it accessible to viewers who might not typically gravitate toward the genre. The emotional core and human drama transcend the specifics of the mob world, creating universal themes of love, betrayal, and survival that resonate widely. This accessibility helps keep the audience engaged from start to finish, regardless of their usual tastes. The film's mix of tension, emotional depth, and thought-provoking content also creates a kind of cinematic experience that invites viewers to lose themselves fully in the story. It's not just about watching events unfold, it's about feeling the weight of those events, living through the characters' dilemmas, and riding the highs and lows with them. This immersive quality is what makes Gotti so engaging, transforming it into a story that lingers in the mind and heart. In the end, Gotti manages to strike a powerful balance between entertainment and emotional resonance. It delivers action and drama with flair, but also invests heavily in character complexity and thematic depth, ensuring that viewers remain captivated on multiple levels. The film's ability to elicit laughter, shock, sadness, and excitement, while also sparking thoughtful discussion and rewarding repeated viewings, speaks to its skillful storytelling and rich emotional landscape. It's this multifaceted engagement that makes Gotti more than just a movie. It becomes an experience that invites audiences to connect, reflect, and come back for more. When you really dive into comparing Gotti with its peers in the gangster film world, you start to see a rich tapestry of influences and styles that this movie both leans on and diverges from in interesting ways. Gangster films have long held a special place in cinema, from the classic, operatic grandeur of The Godfather to the gritty street-level realism of Goodfellas, to the stylized, almost mythic storytelling in films like Scarface. Against this backdrop, Gotti steps in as a more straightforward, somewhat traditional retelling of a mob boss's life, and that choice defines a lot about its tone, pacing, and emotional impact. First off, Gotti doesn't try to dazzle with flashy visuals or break new ground with storytelling techniques. Instead, it opts for a more restrained and classic approach, focusing heavily on the human and familial side of John Gotti's story. This sets it apart from some of the genre's more kinetic offerings, where rapid-fire editing, intense action sequences, and stylized violence dominate the screen. Here, the focus is on the man behind the myth, the family man, the father, the boss, and the consequences that come with that life. This approach gives the film a slower, more deliberate pace, allowing for deeper character moments that might get lost in flashier productions. If you think about films like Donnie Brasco or A Bronx Tale, which similarly explore the personal lives and moral complexities of mobsters, Gotti fits comfortably into that niche. It shares that emphasis on character-driven storytelling rather than just glorifying crime or focusing on sensational moments. The film invites the audience to see Gotti as a layered individual, wrestling with loyalty, family, and survival, which gives it an emotional weight that might be missed in more action-focused gangster films. That said, when stacked against iconic titles like The Godfather or Goodfellas, Gotti doesn't quite reach the same legendary status or cinematic impact. Those classics revolutionized the genre with epic narratives, unforgettable lines, and groundbreaking direction, turning mob stories into timeless cultural touchstones. Gotti chooses a more modest path. It doesn't seek to mythologize or romanticize its protagonist to the same extent, which can make it feel more like a biographical drama than a grand epic. This can be a double-edged sword. While some viewers appreciate the grounded, human portrayal, others might find it lacking in the memorable flair or intensity that define the best gangster films. Looking at the director's vision, Gotti is clearly an effort to tell a solid, respectful story without pushing the boundaries of style or narrative form. There's comfort in its predictability and straightforwardness. It delivers what fans expect from a mob biopic without unnecessary gimmicks or experimental storytelling. This makes it accessible to viewers who prefer their gangster tales told in a traditional manner but might leave those looking for innovation wanting more. In the modern era of gangster storytelling, Gotti also stands apart from recent trendsetters like The Irishman or John Wick, which reinvent genre conventions through either sprawling, introspective epics or hyper-stylized action. While The Irishman offers a multi-decade, reflective examination of its characters and the passing of time, and John Wick pumps the genre full of adrenaline-fueled action, Gotti stays rooted in a personal, straightforward narrative about power and family. It doesn't attempt to compete with those films' scale or style, but instead carves out its own space in the quieter, character-focused corner of the genre. Interestingly, Gotti also invites comparisons to acclaimed TV series like The Sopranos or Boardwalk Empire, where in-depth character development and psychological complexity became hallmarks of gangster storytelling. While Gotti touches on some similar themes, the clash between personal and criminal life, the weight of family loyalty, it doesn't quite match the layered storytelling or nuanced performances that episodic storytelling allows. Nonetheless, it attempts to capture some of that emotional complexity within its limited runtime, giving fans of those series something familiar to connect with, even if it's a more condensed experience. When it comes to fresh contributions, Gotti doesn't revolutionize the gangster genre, but it doesn't have to. Its strength lies in providing a humanizing look at one of America's most notorious crime figures, something that can feel refreshing amid more stylized or sensationalized mob stories. The film opts for sincerity, an emotional depth over spectacle, aiming to offer viewers a portrait of a man shaped by his times, his family, and the choices he made. This grounding in reality can make the story resonate in a different way, appealing to viewers who want substance over style. In the grand scheme, Gotti plays the role of a reliable, traditional gangster biopic, one that fans of the genre will recognize and appreciate for its familiar beats and focus on family loyalty and power struggles. It doesn't append expectations or dazzle with innovation, but it delivers a solid, earnest portrayal that fits comfortably alongside other films exploring similar themes. It's like a well-cooked classic meal, maybe not flashy or groundbreaking, but satisfying for those who know and love the genre's flavors. Ultimately, Gotti stands as a steady, if somewhat conventional, entry in the gangster film canon. It honors the genre's traditions while offering a personal, character-driven narrative that keeps the focus on the human side of crime and power. For viewers looking for a straightforward, emotionally grounded story about one of the most infamous mob bosses in history, Gotti offers a familiar but heartfelt journey that fits well within the landscape of classic mob cinema. Diving even deeper into the world of Gotti, the film's use of symbolism and metaphor becomes a fascinating study in how small, often overlooked details can carry immense meaning and elevate the story beyond a simple crime biography. These elements aren't flashy or overt. Instead, they're tucked into the visual language, character interactions, and narrative beats in ways that reward attentive viewers and add rich layers to the film's emotional and thematic core. Take the theme of legacy and family, for example. This isn't just about John Gotti's criminal empire, it's about what he leaves behind and how that legacy shapes everyone around him. The film uses visual symbols like family portraits, heirlooms, and keepsakes to represent the invisible weight of history. When the camera lingers on these objects, it's a reminder that the past isn't gone, it's alive, haunting the present. These items become silent storytellers, suggesting that the story of Gotti isn't just his. It's the story of a lineage, with its hopes, betrayals, and burdens. It's almost like the family is a character itself, constantly present, influencing every decision and every action. Light and shadow play an essential metaphorical role as well. Throughout the film, Gotti is often framed in half-light, his face partly illuminated, partly cloaked in darkness. This visual choice mirrors the duality at the heart of his life, the public man who commands respect and the private man who deals in secrets and violence. It's a constant reminder that he lives between two worlds, neither fully good nor fully bad. This chiaroscuro effect hints at the complexity of morality in the gangster lifestyle, where lines blur and everyone operates in shades of gray. Scenes drenched in shadow often coincide with moments of moral compromise or danger, while lighter scenes sometimes feel almost like brief glimpses of hope or normalcy in a turbulent life. Locations themselves become symbolic spaces charged with meaning. Gotti's home, for example, isn't just where family dinners happen. It's a fortress, a command center, and a prison all at once. The heavy doors, the guarded entrances, and the tense atmosphere create a setting that reflects the paradox of power. The higher you rise, the more isolated and trapped you can become. The home becomes a metaphor for control and confinement, illustrating how Gotti's personal life and criminal life are inextricably linked, but also how that link tightens into a kind of cage. The settings aren't just backdrops, but active players that reflect the emotional and psychological states of the characters. The criminal underworld is portrayed with symbolism too, often likened to a jungle or battlefield. This metaphor reveals the primal nature beneath the polished suits and whispered deals. Violence, territory, and power struggles are not just plot points, but echoes of an ancient survival instinct. The film suggests that mob life, while modern in appearance, taps into something raw and elemental, the fight for dominance, protection, and respect. This metaphor gives a kind of mythic dimension to the story, framing Gotti's life as part of a timeless saga of human ambition and conflict. Another subtle but powerful metaphor is found in Gotti's personal style. His sharp suits, meticulously groomed hair, and confident body language aren't just about vanity, they symbolize armor and performance. In a world where reputation is currency, how you present yourself can be as important as the actions you take. Gotti's appearance becomes a visual metaphor for control over identity and perception. This highlights one of the film's deeper themes. That power isn't just about brute force, but also about managing image and influence. His outward confidence masks the internal pressures and dangers he faces, making his style a carefully crafted shield. The score and sound design also contribute metaphorically, weaving musical motifs that underscore the emotional highs and lows of Gotti's journey. Recurring themes in the soundtrack echo the rise and fall of power, family bonds, and betrayal. These musical elements act as a kind of emotional shorthand, reinforcing the narrative's rhythm and heightening tension. At times, the deliberate use of silence or minimal sound speaks volumes, symbolizing moments of suspense, reflection, or unspoken threats. The soundtrack isn't just background noise, it's an emotional landscape that mirrors the story's unfolding drama. Even small details, like the way phone conversations are shot, often close and claustrophobic, carry metaphorical weight. These scenes symbolize the intricate dance of communication and control in Gotti's world. Silence between words, pauses, and the framing of these moments suggests that what's not said can be as powerful as what is spoken. It highlights the constant tension and strategy involved in maintaining power, where every call could shift alliances or spell danger. All these layers of symbolism and metaphor transform Gotti from a straightforward crime drama into a rich, textured experience. The film invites viewers to look beyond the surface, to see family heirlooms as the ghosts of the past, light and shadow as moral battlegrounds, and personal style as armor in a war for survival. These hidden meanings don't just decorate the story, they deepen its themes of legacy, identity, power, and sacrifice. By weaving these elements into its narrative and visuals, Gotti creates a cinematic tapestry that resonates on multiple levels, rewarding those who dive into its nuances with a more profound understanding of the man and the world he inhabited. When you really dig into the historical context of Gotti, the film reveals itself as much more than just a biopic. It becomes a vivid journey through a pivotal era in American organized crime, capturing the rise and fall of one of the most notorious figures in mafia history. Unlike films that exist as part of a sprawling franchise, Gotti stands alone, focusing sharply on the man himself and the world he ruled. This singular focus allows the film to immerse viewers in the complexities of a time when the mafia's influence was at its peak, but also under unprecedented scrutiny from law enforcement and the media. The filmmakers painstakingly recreate the late 1970s through the early 1990s with meticulous attention to period detail, crafting a setting that feels authentic and lived in. The sharp, tailored suits worn by John Gotti and his associates are more than just a fashion statement. They symbolize status, power, and a code of appearance that was crucial in the mafia world. Classic cars cruise through the streets of Queens, old rotary phones ring in dimly lit rooms, and cigarette smoke hangs heavy in the air, each element a piece of the cultural mosaic that defines this era. These details do more than decorate the film. They transport the audience into a world where style and menace coexist. Accuracy in Gotti is a delicate dance. The film walks the line between dramatization and historical fact, capturing key events like the infamous 1985 assassination of Paul Castellano, Gotti's subsequent rise to boss of the Gambino family, and his high-profile trials that earned him the nickname the Teflon Don. While some scenes are compressed or heightened for dramatic effect, the core timeline remains intact, giving viewers a reasonably faithful portrait of Gotti's life and criminal empire. This blend of fact and storytelling keeps the movie engaging, ensuring that it educates as it entertains without becoming bogged down in minutiae. The backdrop of the 1980s and 90s, with its shifting political and social climate, adds crucial layers to the story. This period was marked by an aggressive crackdown on organized crime by federal agencies, spearheaded by ambitious prosecutors determined to bring down the mafia's iron grip on New York and beyond. The film captures this escalating tension masterfully. The cat-and-mouse game between Gotti and the FBI adds a pulse-pounding element to the narrative. Scenes showing wiretaps, secret meetings, and courtroom drama underline how the old mafia ways were being challenged by new legal strategies and changing public attitudes. But what really makes Gotti stand out in its historical context is how it doesn't just dwell on the public figure or the sensational headlines. Instead, it digs into the social fabric surrounding the man. The film explores the mafia as a unique subculture, complete with its own values, rituals, and codes of conduct. Family loyalty, respect, silence, and honor are themes that pulse beneath the surface, influencing every decision and relationship. This immersion allows audiences to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, what drove Gotti and his peers to live by rules that were often harsh but deeply ingrained. Another compelling aspect is the portrayal of the personal cost of his lifestyle. The film doesn't shy away from showing the impact of Gotti's choices on his family and inner circle. Moments of domestic life, juxtaposed with violent power struggles, humanize a figure who might otherwise be seen only as a cold crime boss. This duality makes the historical events more relatable and poignant, reminding viewers that behind the headlines were real people facing complex moral and emotional challenges. Although Gotti isn't a documentary, its historical immersion offers a thrilling window into a chapter of American history that continues to fascinate the public imagination. The film captures the charisma, danger, and eventual downfall of a man who became both a symbol of mafia power and a cautionary tale of hubris. It invites viewers to experience the tension of a world where loyalty could mean life or death, where power was both intoxicating and precarious, and where the rules were always changing. In the grand scheme, Gotti occupies a unique place as a historical drama that brings to life an era defined by crime, ambition, and cultural change. It's a story told through the lens of a singular figure but resonating with larger themes of legacy, justice, and the American experience. By blending immersive period details, dramatic storytelling, and complex character studies, the film offers a rich and compelling portrait that stays with audiences long after the credits roll. Whether you come for the history or the drama, Gotti provides a gripping glimpse into a world where power was everything, and paying the price for it was inevitable. Diving even deeper into Gotti's budget and box office tale reveals a fascinating look at how economics, marketing, and audience tastes collide to shape a film's ultimate fate. Starting with the budget itself, Gotti was crafted with a relatively modest financial blueprint, especially when compared to big studio blockbusters or sprawling crime epics. Estimates suggest the film's production budget hovered somewhere between $10 million and $20 million, a figure that, while respectable, placed some natural limits on what could be achieved on screen. For a story as rich and complex as John Gotti's life, this meant the filmmakers had to be creative and strategic, making careful decisions about everything from shooting locations to special effects and prioritizing story and performance over spectacle. The production quality, considering this budget, is quite notable. Instead of going for grandiose, expensive set pieces, Gotti leans heavily into atmosphere and authenticity. The production design carefully evokes the 1980s and 1990s mafia underworld with gritty interiors, period-appropriate costumes, and detailed props that bring the era to life without feeling overproduced or gimmicky. It's the kind of craftsmanship that speaks to smart resource management, showing that a movie doesn't need a blockbuster budget to build a convincing world. Costumes, makeup, and set dressing all contribute to creating that lived-in feel, and scenes with carefully chosen locations, like Queen Streets, cozy family homes, and star courtrooms, anchor the story in a tangible reality. John Travolta's involvement was both a blessing and a budgeting balancing act. As a well-known star with a legacy of iconic roles, Travolta brought gravitas and name recognition that helped market the film. Yet, given the budget constraints, this meant that other aspects had to be more restrained. The cast was strong but largely composed of lesser-known supporting actors, which worked in the film's favor by keeping focus on Travolta's portrayal without overly inflating costs. His performance is central, and investing resources here was a smart move, aligning with the film's intention to be a character-driven drama rather than a high-octane thriller. When the film hit theaters, however, the box office numbers told a different story. Despite the solid production values and star power, Gotti underperformed significantly at the domestic box office. The opening weekend was modest, and the film struggled to maintain momentum as word of mouth was mixed. One major factor was the marketing campaign, or rather, the lack of a strong one. Unlike many modern releases that come with extensive advertising blitzes, viral social media campaigns, and tie-ins, Gotti's promotional push was comparatively subdued. The trailers and posters reached a limited audience, and the film didn't generate the kind of pre-release buzz that can propel a movie to box office success. It slipped quietly into theaters, which didn't help draw casual moviegoers who might have been intrigued by the mafia drama but needed more convincing. Critical reception further complicated the film's financial picture. Reviews were largely negative or lukewarm, with many critics pointing out flaws in the script, pacing, and character development. While Travolta's performance received some praise, it wasn't enough to overcome the broader perception that the film felt uneven or lacking depth. This kind of reception tends to make audiences hesitant, and in today's hyper-connected world where opinions spread rapidly on social media and review platforms, the film's reputation suffered. Without a strong wave of positive word-of-mouth to counterbalance this, Gotti found itself in a tough spot to attract a larger audience in theaters. But the story doesn't end at the box office doors. Films like Gotti often find a second life on streaming platforms, digital rentals, and home entertainment markets. These avenues allow movies with niche appeal or mixed theatrical runs to reach viewers who may have missed them initially or who prefer watching from home. In many cases, this extended availability helps films recoup costs and can even turn a modest profit long after their initial release. For Gotti, these platforms offer a chance to connect with true crime fans, mafia enthusiasts, and John Travolta admirers who might appreciate the film on a different level than the general theatrical audience. Production-wise, the film's budget also influenced the scale of action and visual storytelling. Unlike some crime dramas that incorporate high-stakes shootouts or flashy car chases, Gotti keeps its violence relatively contained and focused, emphasizing dialogue and character interaction. This choice not only suits the budget, but aligns with the film's mood and pacing. It's more about the tense power plays, courtroom drama, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering than explosive set pieces. This emphasis on atmosphere over spectacle shows how the production team maximized their resources to build tension and drama through performance and writing, even if some critics felt the execution was uneven. Another element tied to the budget was the careful use of locations. Shooting in real neighborhoods and authentic-looking interiors gave the film a natural feel without the expense of building large sets or relying heavily on CGI. This grounded approach adds credibility and helps immerse viewers in the story's world, compensating for what it might lack in big-budget glitz. The focus on realism, down to the little details like period cars and vintage phones, shows a thoughtful use of budgetary constraints that enrich the film's texture. In the bigger picture, Gotti serves as an example of the challenges faced by mid-budget films in today's marketplace. With audiences often gravitating toward either high-profile blockbusters or smaller indie films, mid-tier dramas like this can struggle to find their footing, especially without strong marketing or glowing critical support. The film's financial journey highlights how factors beyond just the quality of the movie, like timing, promotion, and public perception, can heavily influence box office returns. Ultimately, Gotti's budget and box office story is one of ambition, strategy, and the realities of filmmaking economics. It's a film that didn't get the chance to shine widely in theaters, but found ways to make a lasting impression through dedicated production choices and a compelling central performance. It's a reminder that in the film industry, success isn't just about how much money is spent, but how that money is used, and how well the film connects with its audience in a crowded and competitive landscape. When it comes to catching Gotti, you're in luck because the film has embraced the modern multi-platform approach, meaning there are plenty of ways to experience this gritty mob drama beyond just the theaters. If you missed the chance to see it on the big screen during its initial limited release, no worries. The digital age has got you covered with several convenient options tailored to different viewing preferences and setups. Starting with theatrical availability, Gotti had a relatively modest release in select cinemas, mainly in major cities and regions with an audience that appreciates crime biopics. If you're someone who loves that communal theater experience, the booming sound system, the immersive visuals on a giant screen, and that electric buzz of watching intense scenes unfold among fellow moviegoers, your window for catching Gotti in theaters might be closing or already shut depending on where you live. Sometimes films like this resurface in special screenings, film festivals, or themed movie nights hosted by indie cinemas, so it's worth keeping an eye on local listings if you're craving that authentic theatrical feel. Nothing quite beats watching John Travolta's portrayal of the notorious mob boss in a dark theater where every tense moment and courtroom showdown hits you harder. If the theater route isn't an option, or if you prefer the comfort of home viewing, Gotti has been made available on a variety of digital platforms. This is where the flexibility really shines. Digital rental services like Amazon Prime Video, Google Play Movies, Apple iTunes, YouTube Movies, and Vudu offer Gotti for rent or purchase. Renting usually gives you a 24 to 48-hour window to watch the film once you start, perfect for a focused movie night without the long-term commitment. Buying the digital copy, on the other hand, lets you keep Gotti in your virtual library forever, allowing multiple rewatches, ideal for fans who want to study John Travolta's performance or revisit the film's darker themes whenever the mood strikes. For subscribers to popular streaming platforms, there might be windows where Gotti is included as part of the subscription catalog, though availability can vary by region and over time. Services like Hulu, or niche streaming providers specializing in crime and drama, sometimes pick up films like this. These platforms offer an easy, no extra cost way to watch, so it's worth checking if Gotti pops up in your current subscriptions, letting you stream on demand without any additional charges. This is especially convenient if you're someone who likes to binge a genre or explore similar films in one sitting. If you're a traditionalist or a collector at heart, Gotti is also available on physical media, including DVD and Blu-ray. Owning a physical copy gives you the benefits of consistent picture and sound quality, which can be a real treat if you have a solid home theater system. Blu-ray editions often come with bonus features such as behind-the-scenes footage, cast interviews, deleted scenes, and director commentary that add depth to the viewing experience and provide insight into the filmmaking process. For a movie like Gotti, where character study and atmosphere are key, these extras can enhance your appreciation of the story and performances. Plus, having a physical copy means no worries about internet connectivity or platform licensing changes. It's there in your collection whenever you want. Thinking about the best way to watch Gotti for the fullest impact, creating the right environment can elevate your experience dramatically. The film thrives on its intense courtroom scenes, tense dialogues, and moody atmosphere. Watching it in a dark room with good sound makes the tension more palpable, allowing you to catch every nuance of Travolta's voice, every subtle glance, and every dramatic pause. Whether you have a home theater setup or just a good pair of headphones, immersing yourself in the film's world will pull you deeper into the story of power, loyalty, and crime. Consider turning off your phone, dimming the lights, and maybe even preparing some popcorn or your favorite snacks to replicate that cinema vibe at home. If you're a social viewer or just love discussing movies, Gotti also makes for a fantastic movie night choice with friends or family who appreciate true crime stories or biographical dramas. Watching it together gives you the chance to pause and chat about the twists, the characters' motivations, or the historical context behind the mob scenes. This shared experience often leads to lively discussions, theories, or even debates about John Gotti's legacy and the film's interpretation of his life. On the other hand, if you're often on the go or prefer casual viewing, streaming Gotti on a tablet or laptop is a perfectly valid option. While it might not have the grand cinematic impact of a big screen, the story and performances still hold strong, making it easy to enjoy the film during commutes, travel, or whenever you have a quiet moment. This flexibility means you can immerse yourself in the film no matter where life takes you. In addition, many platforms support watching Gotti with subtitles or closed captions, which is great for accessibility or for viewers who want to catch every line clearly, especially during fast-paced courtroom exchanges or moments heavy with dialogue. Some services even allow downloading for offline viewing, so you can prepare ahead for situations with limited internet access. Ultimately, whether you're the kind of person who loves the immersive power of the cinema, the convenience of streaming, or the collectible appeal of physical discs, Gotti has been made accessible in ways that suit a variety of tastes and lifestyles. So no matter your viewing preference, the film is ready and waiting to pull you into the shadowy world of one of America's most notorious mobsters. Just pick your favorite screen, settle in, and let the story unfold.